Hello and thank you for coming to check this out. Okay, this is part 2 of the guide for making lines auto-adjustable and adaptable in your Final Cut titles templates. So the project here is 30 frames a second. It's just 1920 by 1080, and you can see that I'm starting out here with the 4-point linked frame. So you need to check out Automatic Titles Guide Part 9 to know how to put this together. Alright, so in the last guide we looked at animating lines to automate to the area of your rectangles as underlines or banners and sweeps. What we're going to look at for this guide is borders. And we need to have a discussion about the difference between using the geometric width and height to base your automation on versus using scale. So we're also going to talk about that. Alrighty, so let's talk about borders. And I'm thinking specifically of borders that go beyond, if I just turn off the crosshairs there, that go, if we want to animate our borders, we want to be able to do more than this kind of animation. And more, we have to go beyond the limits of what the write-on behavior can do for us as well. So I'm talking about styles where the borders would animate from halfway. So let's start down that road now. I'm going to take the frame here and duplicate it. I'll just put it up here in its own group and call it border. I'll turn everything else off for now. Let's give it a width of 10. Okay, so in order to animate this the way that I want, I need to convert this to points. So let's do that. Okay, so here are my points now, and what I want to do is animate it to run out either side and meet down here in the middle. So I want to add a point right about here, and I'll come to geometry. Oh, I got that right on 0, which is good luck. So you want to make sure in geometry that this point, in this case it's point 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is sitting at 0 on the x-axis. Right, so let's do just a rough animation first. I'll come to style with my playhead at the beginning. I'm going to set these offsets at 50 each and set a keyframe on both, and then you could use ramp behavior instead. I'll come to 1.5 seconds. Set another keyframe. I want this one to hit 0 and this one to hit 100, and I need to choose this point as my start point. We'll just leave it like that for now. Okay, so this is what we have. Yeah, so as you can see, in order to do this, we have removed the geometric height and width. So what we need to do, like we did in the last guide, is we want to transfer the qualities of this shape's height and width onto this shape's height and width. And this is where we need to stop and talk about the alternative first, which is to use scale. So we'll do that first. Okay, so I'm ready to go here with this shape that has been converted to points, and I have title text here. So let's have a look at how to set up auto sizing without geometric height and width available. So the first thing we'll do is apply the align to behavior. You should always make sure ignore sequencing is off if you plan to animate the text with sequence text. Okay, that's in there, and I'll just turn that off while we do the other steps. So without geometric height and width, we have the scale parameters. So let's link, first of all, let's link the scale of the shape to our title. So I've got the main scale parameter linked here to the title text, and we're going to choose object attributes size all. Okay, so we get a result, and if I turn align to on, that'll snap things in there. But I'm just going to turn that off for now. Okay, I'll just rename the link to scale. So the first thing to note is that when you link by scale, these offsets don't do anything for us. So you cannot use these offsets here to pad out and create distance between the shape and the text. Instead, we have the scale parameter here. So let's bump that up to 1.2, and you'll see we get a result. You'll see this distortion here, but Motion has tools to deal with that, so we'll cover that soon. Alrighty, so let's turn Align To back on and see how it handles some more text. Okay, so it's scaling there, it's increasing. And now we can talk about what to do about this distortion. So we can come to the, I'm just going to turn off Align To. When I can. Come to, with the shape selected, you want to come to properties, and no, you want to come to shape, sorry, to style, and you want to choose preserve width. And that will get rid of that distortion. For roundness, if we were to throw some roundness on there now, you'll see that if we get rid of preserve scale on this one, roundness distortion is eliminated there as well. So there are things you can do to mitigate the skewing when you choose scale instead. But what we're going to see is there's a kind of distortion that you cannot get rid of. But we'll keep going with this for now. Okay, so if you want to use scale, if you have converted your shape, you don't have geometry, height and width to use anymore, and you want to use scale, this is how you go about it. But the better thing to do is not link scale to size, or total scale to total size. What you want to do is create one link for Y axis and one link for X axis. So we'll look at that. And that's because when we look at this link, remember, we can only use this value here to pad things out, and that tends to cause things to bunch up still. So I'll grab this scale value, this link, and I'm going to change that to transform X and object attribute size width, and then duplicate it. Just rename it here. And this link, we will change it from properties transform scale Y to object attributes, size, height. And I'll turn the align to behavior back on. Okay, so now we have a padding parameter on width and height as well. So that gives you more control, making 2 links instead of 1. Okay, so in this example I have the shape linked and aligned to the text by scale like we did before, but we're focusing on lines at the moment, so I've introduced a line to the mix. And the thing is, we need to make a relationship between the line and the other elements so that things can adjust together, but we don't have geometric height and width in our rectangle anymore, so the only option is to link the width of the line to the x scale of the shape. And this is where the trouble starts to creep in. So if we adjust the text, you'll see that you don't have a uniform relationship between the width of the line and the rectangle. Things become skewed. Okay, so that shows you the limitation, I think, of using scale to link instead of geometric height and width. And that's why we want to find other ways around using scale. We want to do it differently, and that's what this guide is about. Alrighty, so in this group up here, I have things set up the same way. I'll just turn on the align to behaviors, and you'll see much better performance when we adjust the text. The relationship at the edges there between the line and the rectangle is exact. And that's what we want. So we're just going to jump into Final Cut now. And also think about what we did just in the last guide when we linked lines to auto size. And we'll just jump into Final Cut and look ahead to see more clearly what we're talking about here. Right, here in Final Cut I have this title graphic, and this is the title graphic from After Effects reproduction, title reproduction number 10 that was posted last year, 2018 in February. And what I've done is I've rebuilt this graphic using all the methods that we've covered so far. So now you can see that we've got the borders and we've got the line element, and they need to work together, and that's where using scale isn't going to help. So if we come into the parameters here, we're adjusting width, we are adjusting height, and you see that everything needs to work together. And as far as I know, using scale isn't going to let you do that. And this is actually where we're heading. So not too far away, we're going to be looking at putting this together in a kind of step-by-step guide, but you will need to have covered the previous guides to really follow along. This element here is what we covered in the last guide. So if you've seen the previous guide, you'll know how to do that. I haven't animated anything out yet. And if we adjust the height, you'll see that that line element is adjusting automatically to keep up. Right, so we are looking at this other element, borders, and that's brought us full circle. So so the general point is if you want to animate borders like this, you give up geometric height and width. You have the option of using scale instead, but that's not going to be useful for a build like this. So let's jump back to motion and finish it off. Okay, so now we can get busy and cover the steps that this guide was intended for. We just had to take a detour to point out the difference between linking by scale and linking by geometric height and width. I just updated the animation in the keyframe editor. Alrighty, so we have no geometric height and width because we are animating the line in this style. Scale is not going to help us out in this situation, so what we want to do is transfer the qualities, the parameters of height and width from our null frame onto this shape, which has been converted to points. And we're going to do that the same way we did things in the previous guide by using track points behavior. But first of all, we need to take care of this point here. It needs its own anchor, and that anchor has to always sit right there in the middle. So I'm going to grab this crosshair D and duplicate that, and I'll call that start. I want to grab the X position, duplicate it, I'll just rename it right edge, and change this from left edge to right, and then set the mix at 0.5 so it sits in the middle, just like what we saw in the previous guide. Okay, so now we want to add some track point behaviors to our frame. We're going to need 5. So we'll call this one point 1, and we added this point, we made it our start point, so that is now point 1, and that's point 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to drag in this anchor as the source, choose attach to shape, deselect the rest, and reset this parameter. And what I actually realized after the previous guide is that we don't need to run the analyze behavior at all. These will just work like link behaviors. Okay, so for track point 2, we're going to use this one here, so that's D. Deselect the rest. Point 3 is up here, so that's A. Point 4. This corner, that's B. And the last one will be C. Okay, all done. Okay, let's see the results. I'll grab the null frame here. I'll just turn off the crosshairs, and if we adjust the width and adjust the height, then our animated element is going to adjust to those changes. Okay, so from here you know the story. We would be linking the null frame and aligning the null frame to the text to get our automation. And so this is a part of what we saw in Final Cut just before. Okay, hey, thanks for taking the time to check this out. It was a very long way around explaining a very basic step to do, but I hope I was able to make the need for this as clear as possible. Great, thanks for watching.